Excellent afternoon to all those who are watching us across the state in Nigeria. Yes, quite a number of interesting things happens behind the camera. But guys, let's stay still on the topic at hand. Today we're talking about taxation, and tax is crucial to the functioning of a state as it provides the revenue necessary to fund essential public services such as education, healthcare, and infrastructure as well. And I think that this can, not that I think, I know this can actually foster, a sense of civic responsibility and, of course, promoting a healthy and, prosperous society. And however, in some certain instances, this becomes a dilemma for the government. What the dilemma is what we'll be talking about on the front burner of today's topic. And I'm using this opportunity to also say welcome again. I have Damilola in the building. I have her on the platform, the woman in green. She was saying that she was in the spirit thinking that I'll be wearing boo-boo. Ask her that, does you think it's only real talk that I do with every day of my life?
No, but because we are in the season of the Ramadan closure, Ramadan is coming to an end, so at least everybody, we are back to default setting. Please, if you
look good, by the way. Let's start from there.
Oh my God! And of course, you black. There comes the girl in black. Hey, after now, go and dance it out. Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? I hope it's a beautiful new day. I say Ramadan Kareem to all the Muslim faithfuls who have diligently done their path for Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for Nabi, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to do his path to bless us according to the rites of Ramadan. How are you today?
All right, fantastic. How are you today? I think we should go straight to on this day in history segment. Let's see what the history has for us. Stay with us. I'll be right back.
On this day in 2016, according to Punch reports, the immediate past chief of air staff, Air Marshal Adesola Amosu, retired, returned 2.3 billion naira to the federal government, the Punch has learned. An impeccable source at the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission told our correspondents that Amosu issued 2 bank drafts to the federal government as part of the funds allegedly diverted by his office as chief of air staff. The source said, "I can confirm to you that Amosu has returned 2.3 billion naira. He raised 2 bank drafts. One draft was 2 billion naira, while the second was 300 million naira. The Punch had exclusively reported on February 11th, same year, the houses belonging to Amosu worth over 500 million naira had been seized by the EFCC. In Amosu's Badagry home, the EFCC had also recovered about $140,000 in cash. The Punch had also reported that the anti-graft agency recovered 381 million naira from Amosu's wife, Omolara. The money was recovered in 3 tranches of 180 million naira, 101 million naira, and 100 million naira.
All right, many thanks for staying with us. Damilola, quickly, what's your take on this day in history segment?
Well, nothing too much. It just it reminds us that things can happen and things can be done appropriately. I remember that when President Muhammadu Buhari came into office in 2015, I think these were part of his first project, because I remember that period there were so many whistleblowers. We were finding monies everywhere, so under the septic tank, this, that, and people were even forfeiting for free. I remember that I made a call through to my dad and said, in your lifetime, have you ever heard that the government witch hunts somebody so badly and they are even ready to forfeit their properties? But I think that I would say that the energy has come down a bit. I don't know, some people are of the speculation that, the corruption is a bigger school that not one man can fight. So at the end of the day, probably the corruption practice swallowed the goodwill or what President Muhammadu Buhari was trying to prove to us at that time. But it's good, because when you steal public funds or when you siphon public funds, you should be made to return it. You can't die and go to heaven with it. That's the truth. So why are we greedy? Why are we not accountable to things that are being entrusted to us? Because this money, how would you tell me a serving chief had made so much money in the life? Even if you have spent 40 years in service, how about, we know what Nigeria is saying now. So for a few of us that are still in that place of putting our hands in the coffers of the public, I plead that we should please temper justice with mercy.
All right. For me, I just feel that the former Chief of Air Staff, that's Air Marshal Adeshola Amosun, returning about 2.3 billion naira to the federal government, as at 7 years ago to be precise, really shows the degree of corruption affecting our system, our country, Nigeria. And for me, I just feel that Nigerians are hoping and praying that the coming administration doesn't actually encourage the same trend, because there are loads of leakages in form of corruption that are out there, which I feel that those leakages, if it can be blocked, can save us from all the shame of borrowing from external sources and all of that. I just feel that, corruption in this country, we've not found a visionary leader who is going to tackle it. And I feel that when that is tackled, some of the challenges we are facing today in a lot of sectors will actually, will reduce, and we'll see a light in that sector. But on this note, history is reminding us of this man with all the money that he embezzled. I think it's important for us to get a quick message from my sponsor. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, the IMF and the World Bank Group kicked off their 2023 spring meeting 10 days ago, facing global challenges and, of course, stemming from high inflation and slower economic growth, and the focus on uncertainties and risks, weighing on the global economy due to high inflation and the cost of living, of course, in terms of the crisis of the cost of living and the slower economic growth that is facing us in Nigeria. And back home here, the federal government says that it will increase level on tax on tobacco products from 30% ad valorem to 50% as part of the measures to control tobacco smoking in the country, in order to meet the World Health Organization, which is WHO standard. Of course, they're also talking about Dr. Mangai Malu, as the head of, tobacco control units, who is also, who is the non-tobacco, the tobacco control unit, and of course the non-communicable disease division of Federal Ministry of Health disclosed also on Tuesday that at the National Tobacco Control Budget Advocates meeting in Abuja. And of course the government faces a dilemma of course, when it comes to taxing tobacco, as well as the significant source of the revenue when it comes to tax, but also they are posing what is important, which is the health control. How do you look for how to help the citizen to curb all of this crisis in terms of health control, is also what we will be talking about in terms of the increase in tobacco taxes and how to reduce the smoking rates, and of course the improve of the public health is what is paramount to us on this platform. But I think what is important also is to also make sure that the results in the decrease of the tax, the tax revenue, which I feel that reducing tobacco taxes may increase smoking rates. If you ask me, I'm just thinking aloud. Of course, it could aggravate the health problems, and the putting additional strain on the healthcare system, in which they are trying to even curb. I feel that the tax is going to increase that, but that is my opinion. On this note, I think it's important for us to actually discuss this in terms of a bit of the IMF spring meetings involving the impact on the nation. And of course, IMF and World Bank and other people have also spoken about the development of economics as well. So likewise, we will be discussing the tobacco tax increment, which I've also emphasized on earlier, and of course the implications of all of this in terms of economic implication and all. But on the show today, it's important for us to quickly go through the brief of our guests for you to know the profile of the person who will be talking on the topic at hand. Stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for joining us in the studio today, and I must say thank you for always honoring my invite, Dr. Muda Yusuf. It's a pleasure to have you on the platform. How are you doing today,
It's
sir?
a pleasure to be here too.
I know, thank you so much. So
Yes.
let's just dive to the topic at hand, because I feel that the spring meeting are ongoing at the moment, and of course, you know, we've seen how we've been well represented by the Minister of Finance, that is Mrs. Zainab Ahmed as well, and our team. And I must ask you, in your assessment, you know, with all that is going on in terms of the objective of this summit, what do you think this has aligned with this are aligned in our country in terms of the failure of the Nigerian economic problem with the ongoing spring meeting that is going on at the moment?
Well, typically the World Bank, IMF have some very strong positions on some key issues.
Okay.
You know, issues around foreign exchange management, for instance.
Okay.
Issues around debt management.
Okay.
Issues around fuel subsidy. Okay. You know, this has been some recurring issues over time as to what the Nigerian government should do in order to ensure that we put the economy on a sound footing. To some extent, we have been, you know, doing some of those. We have been taking some steps along some of those lines, but in some other areas, we have not been doing so well as far as those reforms and the aspirations of IMF and World Bank are concerned. In the area of fuel subsidy, obviously, the government has been trying to, you know, work out a strategy to exit from the subsidy, which is a good thing. Although the subsidy thing is a very challenging issue to tackle because of the social and the political dimensions of the issue. On the foreign exchange, we have not been doing so well because the central bank has been very rigid on its position on how to manage the foreign exchange market. So there is a bit of divergence of views between the IMF, World Bank, and the central bank as far as foreign exchange management is concerned. On issue of debt, well, it's neither here nor there. The IMF has severally expressed concern at the level of debt and the unsustainability of the debt. That's a major concern, and the government is not doing so much yet to curtail the debt because the government believes that the problem we have is not so much of debt, it's much more about revenue. So it's not that we have a debt problem. What they have argued is that we have a revenue problem. So it's neither here nor there. So as far as the vision or the aspirations or the disposition of IMF and World Bank is concerned, those are the areas in which we have been able to align and areas in which we have divergent positions. Yes. Okay,
sir. If we're talking about the taxation, I remember that also, I think sometimes last year, talking about the PET bottle mineral soda drink that we have, there was a taxation increment in taxation on it. But sometimes it borders on the fact that you can increase tax probably to reduce health risk and all of that. Tobacco smokers are liable to die young, and some of these tobacco smokers still feel that it's their death. If they want to die, they want to die. But now, how about managing these revenues? Because if you get money from tax, it should be going somewhere. And sometimes we're not seeing, if you get 50 naira here and you have a project of 60 naira, even if you put in 40 naira, I mean, you have done a part of it. But we are not seeing that from the side of our government. Does that tell us that it's a gross irresponsibility on their side, or it's just negligence?
No, you see, taxation, there's a moral issue in taxation. Because if you are imposing a tax on people, you must be able to show evidence of what you have used the tax for.
Exactly.
And that is what will also create room for legitimacy of both the tax policy and the government itself. You know, but that has been largely lacking. I agree with you. Because if you look at stories about corruption in public office, for instance, these monies are coming from these taxes. If you are looking at stories around value for money, which we don't have much of, that is a concern. You know, if you look at stories around even the report by the Auditor General of the Federation, there have been several audit reports which indicted many agencies of government as to the quality of spending, the issue of not retiring their expenditure, so many issues around the audit reports. Unfortunately, not much is happening in terms of taking steps to sanction the relevant agencies of government. So when you begin to see things like that, it doesn't inspire the trust of the citizens, because taxation is also a sacrifice on the part of the citizens. Just as it is a responsibility, but it's also a form of sacrifice. So if you are making that sacrifice, there must be evidence that the sacrifice you are making is not wasted, that you are getting the right outcomes. So that is why it is also important for there to be accountability, transparency in the utilization of the resources of the states. And that is why we have the National Assembly. Unfortunately, some of them too are also part of the problem. But the National Assembly is supposed to oversight the executive as to how they manage the resources. And we have the equivalent also at the state level. We have the State Assembly. You know? Then, of course, there's also the need for citizen participation, because we are beginning to see that it is increasingly becoming important for the citizens to be very active in this democracy. So that we can engage the authorities, those whom we have voted for, those who are in the custody of our resources, we can engage them.
All right, many thanks for your submission thus far. For me, while you were talking about utilization of funds and, of course, borrowing money. And one will actually think that, I will be quick to think that the revenue for Nigeria is to borrow money and the likes and all of that in terms of development of projects and, of course, economic initiative, given debt profile thus far, 77 trillion, if not more by now. So what's your own assessment in terms of, part of the goals of the economic train representing us, and how I feel that, we should be sustaining the financial credibility to global monetary organizations at the moment? What's your take on this?
Well, my take on that is that we need to do a lot more in the quality of our economic governance. Because what economic governance means is that you must have the right kind of economic team in place. Those who are really qualified to manage the economy, those who are qualified to hold some key positions in government. Once you have that, and you get those at the highest level of the political leadership to also, listen and take advice from this economic team. If you have that, you are likely to have much better economic policies. And when we talk about economic policies, we are looking at our fiscal policy, we are looking at our monetary policy, we are looking at our foreign exchange policy. A good team should be able to deliver good policies. It's also important that you have the right kind of regulatory environment, because regulations also matter in the economy. If the regulatory environment is too harsh, is too difficult, or is too loose, such that people who are doing business, in ways that are not ethical, are getting by and are even making more money than those who are compliant, those things are not good. So what is important at the end of the day is to be able to create the environment to ensure that we inspire the confidence of investors.
When you're talking about creating an enabling environment, which is part of ease of doing business, if you ask me, you also mentioned the advice that must come in terms of regulatory policies and all of that. I want to quote Dr. Michael Olawale, who said that, who is the president of from the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and, of course, Industry, that's the LCCI, and he proposed that increase of 3%, should be what the corporate income tax, should be rated, and in terms of efficiency, which was one of the things that I read about his own submission on Tuesday or Wednesday, I think, where he was talking about the highest rates in the world and the likes and all of that. But I must ask you, with the fact that you are talking about the borrowing, you are talking about regulatory policies and all of that, how does this commensurate with the proposed tobacco tax increment that the government is about to actually perfect?
Generally, the tax environment for those in the tax net is extremely challenging in Nigeria.
Okay.
Because those in the tax net are being possibly even overtaxed. So that is why there is this argument that rather than continue to increase tax rates or tighten the noose on those who are already in the tax net, let us work out a strategy to expand the tax net so that we bring in more people into the tax net. Because those paying taxes now is a very narrow band. They are essentially those who are in the formal sector of the economy. And the formal sector of this economy is less than 50% of this economy. Because these are the people that have, many of them have visible offices, they have audited accounts, they have structures, so the tax officials can trace them. But there are so many people who are also making a whole lot of money, who don't even have any visible offices. Some of them are just staying in some presidential suite in some five-star hotel and doing a whole lot of business. So we have to structure the tax system in a way that will bring a lot more people.
When you're saying structure, does it mean that the federal government needs to find a balance in terms of revenue when it comes to the public health concerns that is required for them? Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying is that we should have a tax system that will bring a lot more people to the tax net. Because right now we have what we call the formal sector of the economy. We have the informal sector of the economy. And even in between, you have people that you cannot even easily trace. So by way of a tax strategy, there can be a way to make sure that people who are engaged in some heavy transactions, whose offices are not visible, you can be able to bring them, because we have quite a number of people that are really making good money,
Yes.
that are not paying taxes, that are commensurate to them. You have guys who are billionaires. You have people who are riding private jets.
What about they are deliberately avoiding tax in
Yes.
terms of their own deductions? You know, I feel that is what those billionaires actually do.
Both deductions and because you have what you call tax avoidance,
Yes.
and tax evasion. A combination of that. If you have very good tax system, we should be able to zero down on all of these things and bring them a lot more, many of these people into the tax. Now, if you do that, the tax base will increase. Secondly, you talk about tobacco. You see, tobacco issue is a very tricky issue.
Okay.
It's tricky because there is the morality of tobacco smoking.
Okay.
There's the economics of the tobacco industry.
Okay.
The morality of it is that we don't even want people to be smoking as a matter of policy
For health conditions.
on health conditions. But the reality is that no matter what we say, people will still smoke. Because even on the packets of these cigarettes, it's put there that
Smokers
smoking
are liable to die young.
to die young. But in spite of that, people still choose to smoke. So to the extent that smoking is not illegal, then we can allow it to be. So it's not something that we should openly begin to encourage. But there's also the economic part of it. If you look at the economics of tobacco, first, in terms of what you call backward integration, the tobacco industry is one of the leading industries in backward integration. What I mean by backward integration is a capacity to generate raw materials locally. If you go to all this Isheyin and all this Shaki area, all these tobacco leaves that are used by the British American tobacco, they are grown by all these farmers. Hundreds of thousands of farmers are engaged in supplying planting this tobacco. They fund them. No, they have what you call this outgrowers scheme. They give them the seedlings, they provide the funding for them, and they offtake this leaf from them. So it's benefiting a whole lot of communities, you know, by way of that patronage. Secondly, if you look at our tax situation, the tobacco companies are also paying heavily. You know, they are one of the heaviest taxpayers. Their tax rate is higher than any other industry, even presently.
And they are still making sales.
They are still making sales. Thirdly, in terms of non-oil exports, they are doing, when you compare them to other sectors in agri, they are one of the best. At least averagely they make about $100 million in exports of tobacco. Wow. that is not to celebrate tobacco smoking, you know. But I'm just looking at both the economics of it and the morality of it. But if you now clamp down on them locally, the danger is that these cigarettes will now be smuggled from outside the country. They will come from Benin, all this Niger, and they come into the country. And once they come into the country, first, you will lose the employment generation by all these farmers. You will lose employment even by the tobacco industry itself. You lose revenue in terms of the taxes that they are paying. You also lose the foreign exchange that they are getting. So it's a question of which of these two evils, which of these two evils,
the devil and the deep
yes, do you prefer the smugglers to be bringing it in, where you cannot even regulate, where you cannot generate employment? So that is the economic argument, you know, on the side of tobacco. So it's a tricky thing. That is just the point I want to make. Yeah, so policymakers should balance, they should have a good balance of this.
All right, we'll go on a quick break. I wish I could touch on the section 35 that talks about the government who can actually restrict certain things because of the interest of the public, but it's unfortunate I cannot contribute to that right now. We'll go on a quick break to get a word from our sponsors. Please stay with us, and the conversation will continue with Damilola when I come back. Stay with us. All right, glad to know you're still with us. In case you just joined the show, today's conversation is about the taxation in Nigeria and, of course, the IMF and World Bank spring meetings and the proposed tobacco tax increment as well. And we have been, you know, having a real discussion with Dr. Muda. Wow, Yusuf, I deliberately infused the lava now. On this second segment, I just feel that it's important for us to actually talk about the implication of tobacco, knowing that, you know, a lot have been said from your submission regarding tobacco tax and, of course, the federal government dilemma as well and all of that. And I must say many thanks for all your submissions also, because I've learned one or two from what you have shared with us. But quickly, let me use this opportunity to open our phone lines. Remember that you can be part of this conversation by calling the studio number 08098877400, showing on your screen right now. We're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube page, both on Real Talk with Kike and, of course, on Silverbird platform. Damilola.
Okay, so I like the fact that you analyzed your submission in two different segments. You talked about the moral aspect and, of course, the economic implication. Now, I want to go to the moral aspect and say that we know this thing is the mass of 2 plus 2. If you clamp down tobacco here, because smokers have been warned severally, and smokers do not even want to desist, maybe because of some brain downtime and all of that, the numerous things that we face. Some people, when you engage smokers, they'll tell you that, oh, this is the only way I can ease my thinking. Even when the Yoruba says, when the alcohol goes out, your problem will still come back. Now, in the moral side of it, how do we help people? Because I think that they have also reduced that awareness. Maybe if the awareness was still ongoing, some smokers might have not joined the clique. Do you understand? But we're not even seeing awareness anymore to say, okay, smokers are liable to die young. Ads that have been cut out. Okay, this is it. If you smoke, then maybe graphical representation of tobacco smoking, somebody who started. We've not seen nothing of such sensitization is going out to the mental side of people to even address the reason why people smoke. Because sometimes it's not medical. Nobody wants to engage in something that will kill you ultimately. But there must be an affecting factor why you are still continuing in that vice. So what would you advise as an elderly man if this matter was to come to your table like this, that, okay, how do you even advise smokers to help themselves? Because even if federal government increases the tax from now to 100%, people that will buy. So what is that thing affecting them, and how should they overcome it?
You see, we have to look at this thing within the framework of drug abuse, because this is also a form of drug abuse.
Absolutely.
You know, and we must commend the NDLA under General Buba Marwa. Okay. They have been doing a great deal of work, clamping down on this. So I think we should use that platform of campaign on drug abuse and extend it further. Part of these extra taxes that are being imposed on tobacco, it could be used, apart from saying that you go to health, it should also be used on campaign against smoking. So there has to be active campaign against smoking, using some of the resources that, you know, the government is getting from this extra tax, because the tobacco industry is paying a lot more than the other regular industries. And don't forget, many years ago, adverts by tobacco companies have even been banned.
Yeah.
Because you know them, they have big budgets for adverts.
Advertising.
For advertising, they are one of the biggest advertisers in those days when they still have the opposition. But that has been stopped. You know? So we now have to go at least on the reverse to ensure that there is a campaign against it. But if we say that we want to clamp down economically on them, the danger is that we may slip into other substitutes, which may even be worse than tobacco. Because right now, at least there can still be some regulation. You can visit their factory, you know what they are doing and all of that. If you clamp down and they go underground, there's a risk that other substitutes may come in. There's also the risk that the market will be flooded by smuggled tobacco products, which are not known, which are not regulated, which, you know, so that is also a bigger risk. So I agree with you, there has to be more intensive campaign against smoking, just as there is campaign against drug abuse. And we can, you know, vote a lot more budget into the campaign, then go to the schools, because these things are much common.
From the foundation.
Yes, from the foundation. If you do all of that within the framework, or I mean, there should be some, you know, those days they used to be
CSR.
Civic education and all these things for children. I mean, if you do that at the primary and secondary level,
catch them young.
This thing will sink. That this is dangerous, you should not do this as you grow, so that once they see anything like smoking, they will run away from it.
All right.
So these are some of the strategies that I think we can use.
All right. You know, I still want to stay put on the implication of revenue for me, because, you know, I like money so much, you know. And I'm trying to understand the implication of what this will be in terms of, you know, tobacco companies, in terms of them reacting towards this tax increment, and of course, you know, then now trying to tend towards cutting production and seeking for mitigation. I want you to really, as in, try to establish more submission on this in terms of implication of their revenue. That's the first question. And I think the second question for me, with what you've shared thus far on this submission of Damlola's last question, I want to take you back to in 2015, when the National Tobacco Control, NTC, actually was enacted, and its regulations, you know, was passed in 2019. I don't know if you remember. And according to WHO then, you know, tobacco causes more than 8 million from the research work that I did, 8 million deaths annually around the world, not just, you know, not tilting it down to Nigeria. And of course, we did more than 7 million of those deaths as well as a result of the people who, in terms of direct tobacco use, and about 1.2 million for those second-hand people who are actually exposed to smoke and all of that. So I want you to let us understand all of this in terms of the health implications as well, apart from the implication of the revenue that I raised earlier, and of course, you know, talking about the how the society, you know, will benefit from it in terms of lung cancer that will be reduced, you know, in terms of the implication of these health issues, if all of these are able to, if governments can able to find solution in terms of the potential impact of this population that is out there, that have been put out there, in terms of those who are smoking, the second-hand smokers, and of course, how do we actually create a way that there's sensitivity to the price increase or increment? I feel that, you know, government is not being sensitive to this, hence the reason why some of the challenges we are facing is still ongoing. What's your take on this?
You see, on revenue, our revenue concern should be about the revenue for government.
Okay.
And that is a much bigger issue beyond even this tobacco issue. Because right now, our revenue base is extremely low. And technically, you can even say that we're insolvent. Because when you look at our capacity to meet our very basic obligations, our revenue cannot cover it. And we have a situation where over 80% of our revenue, we are using it to service debt. That is not sustainable. So beyond tobacco, we need to broaden the scope of our reasoning or analysis to look at what other things we can do so that we can have what generate more revenue.
We're seeking migration from other countries.
Yes, and also, you know, push forward what we call fiscal consolidation, so that we have a fiscal regime that is sustainable. You know, and one of the ways to do this, first, you know, we are losing a lot of money through oil theft. And we have been losing quite a lot. In fact, there was a time, I think, whether the GMD of NNPC was saying that we are losing about 400 billion every month. Billion naira every month. So it's a huge loss that we are suffering from this oil theft.
Nobody has been able to find solutions to this loss.
Well, that's a different issue. But it is a very disturbing thing. So the good news is that very recently, maybe 6 months ago or something, the federal government has woken up to it, to tackle this oil theft, and we are beginning to see some improvements in the oil output. Because for many years we have not been able to meet our OPEC output, OPEC quota. And look at what is happening in the global oil market. This is the best time for any oil producing country to make money. And many of them are making good money. You are perhaps, maybe Nigeria, maybe Venezuela are the only countries that have mismanaged their oil sector. So fixing our oil sector is very key. Secondly, we need to address issues around this fuel subsidy. Yes, it is good to ensure that we have cheap fuel for people, but there's a whole lot of corruption around it. So if we're able to deal with that, we'll be able to unlock a lot of revenue, close to between 6 trillion naira to 7 trillion naira. That will go a long way. And that will not only benefit the federal government, it will benefit all the states and the local governments. Because NNPC is not able to remit funds now to the federation account because of this subsidy. So if we're able to exit from it tactically, because that is also very challenging, then we see an improvement in the revenue accretion to the federation account. And that will benefit the federal government, it will benefit the states, it will also benefit the local governments. So they'll be in a better position to pay better salaries, to pay pensioners, to be able to invest in their education, to be able to invest in their hospitals, to also be able to invest in some infrastructure.
Okay, because of time, let's touch on the healthy side of the question, which I'm talking about the second, what's it called, from the non-smokers themselves in terms of the second-hand smokers and of course the
passive smokers,
passive smokers,
yes,
you know, and all of that.
Yeah,
let's touch on that.
Yeah, the health issue is being managed in fairness. Right now, in many public places, you will see no smoking.
Yes.
It's as if they have been practically ostracized.
No,
They're smokers.
They could say non-smoking at the airport. You will see these people go outside.
Yes,
and stand and smoke.
Yes, it's part of it. At least some inconvenience that you cannot smoke where the
within
people
the
are.
perimeter.
There are some buildings they will tell you that you cannot smoke in this building. Yeah. If you are in the plane, you cannot even smoke in the toilet of the plane.
Will they go outside the plane to go and smoke?
Yeah.
They will complain.
And we have talked about the fact that the tobacco company cannot advertise. So we have to intensify all of these things because the only way out is to discourage as many people as possible from smoking. Of course, we cannot be sending people to prison because they smoke. I mean, that is the only thing that has not been done. But every other thing to make sure that, even to create a perception of somebody who is a smoker. Once somebody is a smoker, there's a negative perception about the person already. So for even within the social space, there's a burden that they carry as smoker. It's just that when people are addicted to something,
they don't mind.
They don't mind.
For me, I'm just happy that you know the low income earners, this will at least calm them down in terms of the pricing increase for tobacco
But
and
my
all of
own
that.
fear is because
But
they might have other vices.
I know. I'm sorry. I know you shared a lot right now regarding the topic at hand, but we have to go on the last segment of the show. But before we go, I want to say many thanks for all your submission. I've learned a lot from a whole lot that you've shared today, and I'm sure quite a number of our listeners or watchers right now have also learned a lot. Many thanks for honoring my invite. But I'm not letting you go yet. There's the last segment of the show that we call Trending Stories. These are stories that bind us together as Nigerians, you know, and that interest us as well. And one of the first trending stories that actually caught my attention is that of the Nigerian Directorate of Nigerian Directorate of Employment that directed unemployed Nigerians to come and register at their company. And I think before I give my own submission, Damilola, let me come to you, because when I saw it online, I was just wondering. I just shared it with all the groups and said, please, how do you do this? What do you make of all of this? Quickly, what's your take?
Well, I think Nigeria is always an unending cruise, the way they see it. It's one story or the other every other day. I remember the last time there was this job recruitment in the National Stadium, and there was stampede. Different things happened, and till now, we didn't even know what ended that particular incident of stampede and the people who commenced the recruitment. So now telling people to go, yes, I agree, they will go, because a lot of people unemployed people are so much, but are they going to surely get that job? Because we still have ghost workers in some parastatals, in some government coffers. If you understand what I say, internally somehow. So are they going to get the job? If you ask somebody to queue for 6 hours, so far the person is going to get the benefit of 6 hours. But what's the essence of asking people to go and register data here, data there, letting their personal information fly all around, just for you to sit back, relax, and just take a bottle of soda and like, well, Nigeria moves on. So sometimes it's not about what we want to do, but how we go about it and the intentions behind our actions.
All right, many thanks for your submission, Damila. For me, I was just thinking aloud that the Nigerian Directorate of Employment,
national,
of employment through Lagos State government are asking the unemployed Nigerians to come and register for work. I find it as a fanciful idea. I'm sorry, that's the only word that comes to mind right now, because in my head I'm thinking, is this a positive direction towards elevating unemployment in the system? I don't want to give my answer. However, as to why now is also what is coming to mind, because when we see actions by the federal government and the body language of such actions, for me, I just feel that it's very questionable. What is the goal of this directive is what I'm asking at the moment. Do they actually want unemployed Nigerians to just register, or they actually want to truly provide jobs for them is what I'm asking in pain. I'm wondering why now, knowing that they have few months left. So weeks rather, you know. And according to the Nigerian Economic Summit Group as well, which is the NESG, you know, in January 2023, you know, our unemployment rate was projected to 37%. And I'm wondering, has it been, what has been hovering around this 32% in the past 1 year as well, that the data have come to fall? So this regime, I don't know what to call them, or this administration that is winding up in a few weeks, I'm wondering, what do they want to achieve in few weeks? Are they collating this data down for the next administration to come and work on it, is what I'm asking in pain? Or are they collating and registering them to tell us that they've provided millions of jobs for these Nigerians, that becomes, you know, first debate again in the public space, because we know how much they will say that each homes are collecting certain amount of money. That's not the conversation today, but I'm just wondering, I'm putting all of this out there because this regime, as far as I'm concerned, has expired. I honestly don't know. And I also remember clearly that, you know, in March 2024, exactly 9 years ago, you know, there was a mass recruitment exercise that led to 7 applicants losing their lives in stampede at immigration employment. And I'm asking in pain, what exactly do they want to achieve from this again? There should be feasible actionable policies. Right here, you've spoken about regulation. Dr. Muda Yusuf, you've spoken about, policy. You've spoken about how they can be held accountable in terms of revenue. This is one of the things that we are talking about in terms of deliberate action that the people can trust and believe in the people. Because in one of your submission again, you spoke about trust. What are they using our money for? Tax? What are they using it for? Hence the reason why you see that some people are avoiding tax. I don't want to say certain things here because I know that, but in the developed countries, you can hold your government accountable and you can see the development in terms of infrastructure on why they are paying tax. The question is, I feel that sometimes our government, because we've not been able to, I don't know what to say, maybe in terms of, create a policy that we can hold them accountable when they get to the corridor of power and not play with humans' emotions. Because this is where, what's it called, intelligence, what's it called now? Forgotten this word now.
Artificial intelligence.
There's no empathy. Sometimes you raise the hopes of the people, thinking that, yes, with all that we have done, something will come out. And at the end of it, nothing is coming out of it. Quickly, sir, before they start running commentary in my ears that we are rounding up, what's your submission on this?
Well, we need data for everything that we do, for planning and so on. So, first of all, I don't expect that this legislation will be physical. It has to be digital because, we have gone past the age where people will now go and queue and
run pop and office.
like they do with this NIN, and I think it's better to be digital. Secondly, I think we need to work a lot more on the quality of our data because in the advanced economies, when they want to do anything, even all these social intervention funds, because they have quality data.
Up to date.
Yes, it's very easy for them. During COVID, in the United States, there were categories of people that they gave some monies to directly, just to cushion the effect. So I think we should continue to, emphasize the need for quality data.
All right.
To enable intervention, to enable planning and all of that, so that from the data, whatever government wants to do, you can easily look at it.
All right, many thanks for your submission. Quickly, let's touch on the second trending story, which is about a woman that christened a newborn baby with corruption prayers. I wish that we can pull that video up quickly, so that for those who have not seen it can understand where we are coming from. And it's unfortunate. Let me quickly give my submission on this before you want to play the video right now. Let's play a bit of it and we'll come back for submission on it. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Akọ́rẹ́dé ẹ̀rí ẹ̀dá lọ́lọ́mì Ọlámilẹ́kan Akínwálé láti àkókò iná láti Nàìjíríà tó fi dẹ́kọ̀ èkó òkìkí rẹ̀ sọ́kàn fún rere. Nínú lẹ́yìn àtìlẹ́ bàbá a máa rí ọ ní àní fi ọ́ ṣàwátì Jésù agbára wa. Nàìjíríà ọ̀dà tábà tí mo bá rò tí wọ́n ti fi yí odò 16 ó ti níye mílíọ̀nù tó jẹ́. Israel Akọ́rẹ́dé èmi fi èdìdí bírò ilé ọlọ́wọ́ láti òní lọ lórílẹ̀‐èdè Nàìjíríà nínú àwọn tí wọ́n máa fi báyìí kówó Nàìjíríà jẹ orúkọ rẹ mọ́rùn ẹ bá ṣàmì dáadáa ẹ tún bá mi ṣàmì dáadáa ọmọ yìí bá di gómìnà kò léwọ́.
Thanks, Moses, for helping us to direct this. But quickly, we can laugh about this, but for me, it's actually not funny because these are the kind of parents that makes us lose hope in a brighter tomorrow for our country. Sir, earlier you were talking about the foundation of orientation of the students from the grassroots, from school and the likes at primary level, at high school and all of that. But we've forgotten that the foundation that we're actually talking about starts from the home. Exactly. And imagine this mindset, for goodness sake. Can we just imagine the open, brazen utterances that are tantamount to nothing but shame? So, in a public space like that, making such prayers that a newborn baby will grow up to become a fraudster, and we embezzle public funds with a pen. Can we imagine the depth of the mental disorder? Because I don't think this is normal. The mental disorder that we are having in our own midst. Sometimes, Emma, when we are on suit, Apologies for my non-Yoruba for list. What advice would such a woman give a teenage girl or a boy right now? Obviously, this kind of woman would, I don't know, will lead them to prostitution. For lack, please, I just have to keep it real on this platform. Will lead them to cultism and anything that can bring money. We have worshipped money too much in this country. As far as I'm concerned, in this part of the world, especially in Nigeria. Part of the things that I feel parents need to make very priority is the value. Value is key. In the upcoming generation, they just want to blow. They are not ready to follow the process. So it's just unfortunate. And you can see the child of the mother is there.
The mother of the child.
The mother of the child, you know, I felt irritated and disgusted that women, you know, a woman said this, and she's a preacher for goodness sake. Holding a baby in a public space, it is more sorrowful to know that those are the kind of people that will train this child. That's the bigger problem I think that we have today. Sometimes we are quick to hold government accountable. No, it starts from us. The society is gone. So help us God. Hence the reason why you will realize that. Hence the reason why you realize that you will see some children are being burnt publicly and their parents are saying their children are innocent. It's a lie. These are part of the root cause of the issues that we are facing in our problem today. Dami, let me come to you quickly.
Let me quickly summarize this. I don't think in any form this is prayer. This is open curses, because you are saying it to the wind. You are saying it to the air that this child will be part of the people. And we don't even know what she has used. Let's go traditional and religious. We don't know what she has taken in the morning. You are cursing the child. So when EFCC starts to chase that boy in the next 20, 30 years, we'll begin to wonder, but he's not a fraudster. You don't know the foundation. The naming is the foundation of any child.
Sir, in 30 seconds, what's your submission to this? They are running commentary in my ears.
No, it's very unfortunate.
Yes.
For me, this is very, very abnormal. I don't know why any parent or any preacher will do this kind of thing. It's also a reflection of the total collapse of value system. Values have collapsed, and the way we celebrate wealth, irrespective of the quality of the wealth, I think we need to check it.
I think she needs to be brought in for questioning. Around her, she'll have Yahoo boys that she's praying for. God will let your Oyinbo pay money.
Like the studio people, like the technical director is screaming that the only thing that is missing is laptop, not pen. Yahoo. On that note, with that, we've come to the end of another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. But I must say many thanks to our resourceful guest, Dr. Muda, Lawal Yusuf. You know, that Lawal has already talked about. Many thanks for being in the studio today, and thank you for talking on, as in showing light on the topic at hand. And I pray that God will continue to, you know, abide with you and your family. With this is where I draw the curtains of the show. Remember, tomorrow is public holiday, salad time. It's time for us to enjoy. Bye now. My name is Kike of Atanda-Owo. Bye.
Thank you.